Review for this book, The Salt Fix. Interesting book, definitely an interesting premise. A contrarian book. It goes against views that salt is bad, decrease it as much as possible. He actually claims the opposite. Not consume as much as you can, but easily consume 5 times than the recommended amounts without any issues. Definitely interesting view. Um, and had we came up with some interesting and strong evidence, mostly some stories. Some parts of the book is just a little too detailed, like what kind of foods and numbers and things like that. But overall, it's a high 3, even a 4. So they like the idea and how to also combat. He says like the crystal problematic crystal is not salt, it's sugar. Definitely some food for thought. Let's see the notes. We don't need less salt. If something, we need more of it. So he doesn't think we need less. Especially he says like he thinks that the limit is way below the recommended, what he recommends. According to the author, the notion that salt increased blood pressure among all individuals is mistaken. So it's just based on bad science. I mean, he has some data to support it. Salt is believed to be bad since it increases blood pressure and heart rate. So that's the normal belief is that it's bad for blood pressure. Low salt levels cause the body to crave sugars in order to compensate for the lack of salt. So that's the main problem of eating less salt, because sugar could also be used as a not antidiuretic, but as electrolytes almost. It helps the body retain sugar. Retain water. Sorry. The kidney can excrete large amount of sodium, giving water enough water consumption. So that's not the problem with eating too much salt. If your body doesn't need it, it would secrete it out by the kidneys. It's believed that the Romans consumed 10k milligrams of sodium, so that's probably 7 times over the recommended amounts for today. I think the recommended amount is 1300. The notion that high sodium intake caused hypertension was grossly misguided by badly designed studies. It's just they're not badly designed. There's also a publication bias there. They wanted to find the problem with sodium. They thought it's connected, and they looked for studies to support it. Publication bias is partially responsible for the alleged correlation between sodium and blood pressure. All those studies that didn't show correlation were in the drawer, so that's a publication bias. Low salt consumption only works for a small minority of the population, so it does help in some situations, but for most people, lowering salt consumption would not lower their blood pressure. Sugar is the problem and was considered okay thanks to research funded by the sugar industry. So before that, they blamed sugar. They blamed salt, not sugar. And those studies that showed that sugar is not the problem was partially funded by the sugar industry. To see an increase of blood pressure, healthy individuals need to consume closer to 20k milligrams. So that's when you really, if you do want to, if you would try to increase blood pressure, you would need around 20k milligrams. That's almost probably 15 to 17 times over the recommended amount, and that's only when you see some higher blood pressure numbers, and even then is not that outside of the normal. Artificially lowering sodium intake could cause high blood pressure due to the body mechanisms. So if you're artificially trying to decrease it, it will not work because the body has its own mechanisms, and it would actually increase blood pressure. The body doesn't retain more water when consuming more sodium since the kidneys excrete it. So some people think if you have too much water in your knees or something, I don't know, right? There's some misconceptions about it. The thing is that there are misconceptions, and the kidney would excrete it out. Cortisol can cause hypertension, so there is a high hypertension in the population. One of the reasons is higher cortisol levels. According to the author, 3 to 60 milligrams of sodium is safe to consume. So it's not so it's minimum double the amount they recommend, to probably 4 times is safe to consume, and he recommends even more. I think he was not very clear about how much he recommends to consume. According to one theory, the potato comes before the couch. So it's the potato couch. The idea there is that people are just, the couch is the problem. But he says that the potato comes before, so people who are like specifically for carbs, people who prefer carbs would just be less active. So the problem is the food or their metabolism versus the couch. Low sodium increase insulin resistance, essentially making us prefer carbs as they metabolize better. So that's what happens when you have not enough sodium. It increases this insulin resistance. So that's could also be a problem, or could be a factor in diabetes. What it does, it makes us prefer carbs because there is a resistance, it's metabolized better. Low sodium intake could cause internal starvation, which is also represented by insulin resistance and a fat accumulation. That's the idea of internal starvation, which is basically insulin resistance and fat accumulation. So that's not a problem. Same idea of low sodium intake. It is recommended to increase sodium intake for dieting. So he recommends, I said, that it helps. It makes us more satiated more easily and crave less sugars. Sugar is addictive, and going off of it is associated with withdrawals. So salt, he says that salt is not the problem. It is not addictive, even though people think it is. It's your body really needs it. Salt is addictive. You can easily live without it, which is not the case with sodium. Going off of salt, there's no withdrawals. Going off of sugar, there is withdrawals. There are. Sodium surplus allows the body to weather self-depleting events such as illnesses. So when you have enough storage, it allows the body to have, if there's a diarrhea, we excrete more. If we go running or there's an illness, generally we tend to lose more sodium. In hot and humid climates, you can sweat over 10 milligrams. That means that you need to consume at least that amount in order to function. It's easier to consume salt with orange juice or lemon juice, because if you're really trying to increase the consumption, what is the best way? Eating it is not as fun, or putting it in water, it's kind of weird. So he says like an orange juice or lemon juice is better. It just goes better with it. The next one is high carb and low sodium is even more dangerous, as the body loses capacity for sodium retention. So when low sodium couples with a high carb diet, it's even more problematic, since the body loses the capacity to retain sodium. The next one is, since sodium is used as a preservative, low sodium foods often resort to other more harmful preservatives. That's the problem, because usually salt is a natural preservative. When you try not to use that, because people think salt is bad, or you do use other preservatives which tend to be more harmful. And the last one, so low salt consumption could lead to eating more, since the body is trying to get sodium. So that's another problem in which you can gain weight. You don't get enough sodium. You keep you're not getting satiated as fast, because your body's trying to get the sodium. So you're hungry, even though you need the calories, you just need the salt. So that is for the notes. Again, interesting book, interesting premise. It's definitely a contrarian view. Definitely food for thought. So I would recommend reading it. And yeah, probably give this book a 4 out of 5. Thank you.